Why did our founding fathers hate the democratic form of government and instead give us a constitutional republic? In a constitutional republic, you are the sovereign. You govern yourself, unless you intentionally or negligently do something that causes injury to someone else. And if you do cause injury, you owe remedy to the victim, not to government. In a democracy, you do not rule yourself. You are ruled by a leader, or what they call a representative. By voting in that democracy, you are agreeing to pay whatever government tells you to pay and to obey whatever rules they may contrive. Since in a democracy we must obey the rules of rulers, how perfect should our leaders or representatives be? Very perfect. But they're human beings, so they will probably never be 100% perfect. Maybe it would be possible for Lucky to get a leader that is 80 or even 90% perfect. We hope to get that A- or B+ president, congressperson, governor, mayor, what have you. For a centrally controlled civic structure to function well, the leaders have to get pretty good grades. So how many of them get good grades? None of them. You will see that they almost never give us an outstanding candidate. They give us 2 or 3 choices. It's always the lesser of 2 evils. Most candidates never win more than about 51 or 52% of the votes. If you get 60% on a test or less, you get an F. You fail. In an election, we never get 90%. It's always around 50%, a failing grade. The 50% majority rule concept means that some flunky will be elected simply by outscoring an even worse flunky. They tell you that you are in control of your government even when all the candidates are flunkies, and there's about a 50% chance that you won't even get the flunky you voted for. And your influence in the election is divided by the number of people voting. So if there's more than 200 people voting, your mathematical political influence can be rounded off to 0. And then the people who decide how much tax you will pay and what they will do with all those tax dollars are F-grade clowns who claim to represent you, but probably don't even know your name, much less your political positions. That's how a democracy works, and that is why our founding fathers puked on their shoes when they heard the term. In a constitutional republic, the person who runs your life is you. You decide what to do with your money and your property. You decide how much you will donate to civic projects and process. And you will only be taxed very limited amounts under very limited circumstances. This was back in the day when somebody who raised taxes was not only voted out in short order, they rode out of town on a ripped-down tree branch and were covered in tar and feathers. And for some reason, we don't seem to take as much offense at taxation today. In a constitutional republic, since there are hardly any taxes being paid, rich people immortalize themselves by building roads, city halls, public parks, and such. At the corner of any such edifice, we would find a brass plaque, and sometimes a bust or statue of the benefactor, a well-deserved glorification of the donor. Rich people did that. Poor people did not have to pay for civic infrastructure. In a constitutional republic, poor people are not taxed, and because nobody is taxed very much, there is plenty of charity available to look after the needy. In fact, when we are not taxed, there aren't that many poor people in the first place. You would be amazed at how financially secure you could be if you were not being taxed. I can prove that with some simple arithmetic. If you pay 20% income tax, 10% sales tax, 5% of your income in property tax, which you do whether you rent or own, and then a slew of licenses, registrations, permits, fees, utility taxes, and a boatload of other random nickel and dime taxes, then right off the bat, you are paying at least 40% of your earnings in taxes. But there is a hidden tax that is even higher that no one even thinks about. You are paying everyone else's taxes in the things you buy. You are paying everyone's income tax, property tax, sales tax, other taxes, because all those taxes are added to the price of every product and service you purchase. So your tax burden is well over 80% of your earnings. They have found so many clever and devious ways to increase and compound your taxes that we are now walking around in a brain fog, living in a slave state, thinking we are in the greatest, freest country in the world. Could that 80% tax burden possibly have anything to do with why there are so many poor people? Why we can't get ahead? Why we can't save any money? Why we can't retire? Why everyone is struggling day to day, week to week, maxing out their credit cards and sliding more and more into debt all the time? Maybe? We are tax slaves. Today, Americans pay far more in taxes than ancient Egyptian slaves paid. We are tax slaves, very literally. All you need for a good slave system are two things. You have to take people's money, and you have to make people not realize that you are taking their money. So who said that our federal government should have the privilege to spend $7 trillion a year? Who said that? Who said we have no right to own property without paying taxes every year on that property that we supposedly have a right to own? How did that happen? Who said that just because we buy something, we owe the government money? When we pay sales tax, what has the government given us for that money? Nothing. They just take it and do whatever they want with it. Not only do we not control how they spend our money, they don't even tell us how they spend our money. The military has been audited every year now since 2018. Every year they failed the audit. In 2023, they could not explain where 63% of their money had gone. Out of $816 billion, nearly two-thirds, about $514 billion of military funding, your tax dollars were lost, wasted, or embezzled, and not one soul has lost their jobs, much less gone to prison. That's enough money to buy houses for 1.3 million Americans, or pay the interest on the federal debt for 2 months. Too bad we lost that money. Too bad we lose that much every year. Too bad that's just the military, and we also lose money in every government agency every year in every federal, state, county, and city government in the country. It's not possible for anyone to count how much we're losing. Most government bodies will never let you look at their real accounting. All we can do now is guess how much money they waste, steal, and misuse. So that's why our founding fathers hated democracy and did not make the United States of America a democracy. They made you sovereign. They made you the governor, leader, ruler of your life. You, just you. Why did that work then, but not now? Because then people were honorable. Families were intact. They had religion. They were not voting for things they wanted their neighbor to pay for. They did not ask government for handouts. They didn't need handouts because they weren't paying 80% in taxes. There was more than enough charity to look after the people who were needy. We had more freedom. We left our rulers across the ocean, at least for a while. What do they call democracy? Majority rule. There's your new ruler. There's your new King George III. In the year 1775, when we were getting ready to have a revolution against England's crippling taxation, taxes in England were only 10 to 20% of the taxpayer's income. We now have 40% direct tax and another 40% indirect compound tax burden, 80% taxation. The confounding question is, where is the revolution? Between the propaganda in media and schools, our poor mathematical skills, our lack of time and spirit to challenge our government, we are slaves. How did they do this to us? Democracy. Make us feel like we have a choice, like we are engaged and we have agency. Create that illusion with democracy, that thing our founding fathers hated. People have forgotten. Many years have gone by. We have been taught to love our slavery. And we do. We believe in it. Our educational system does not teach us to think, create, and act. It teaches us to move when a bell rings, to obey someone who calls themselves our leader, to pledge allegiance every morning to the thing that will take 80% of our earnings for the rest of our life. If you think you need a leader, and therefore you need a government, and therefore you need to pay taxes, you have simply failed to pull back the curtain. America has been stolen and repurposed, and America is not a democracy. You are the sovereign. Each of us is self-governed as soon as we understand and reclaim that status and stop acting like puppets in a government puppet show. When you are moving from slave to sovereign, you don't do it by filling out applications with the government or interacting with the government. You do it by knowing you are sovereign and simply acting like that. You simply start ruling yourself and stop letting others rule you. It took a long time to break the system, and it will take time to get it back. You resist and oppose people who think they have a right to control you and take your money by force. No one has the right to do that to you. It is simply being responsible for yourself to make that not happen. Our pioneer ancestors were very hardworking and honorable people. Criminals can't do it. Deadbeats, freeloaders, bums can't do it. Like our founding fathers, we have to be responsible, disciplined, and honorable for our constitutional republic to function. We have to meet our true obligations to family and community and not vote for people and systems that force our neighbors to pay for our expenses. Everyone can easily pay their own expenses when our system is running properly. The most meager and modest enterprise can pay for a home, food, clothing, utilities, and child rearing if most of that income is not being taxed away from us. Charities can easily look after the needy if our income is not taxed away. Our system is now about 250 years old, the same age when the Roman Empire started to collapse. It is at the age where the politicians and bureaucrats have, over several centuries, been able to completely pervert the Founding Fathers' intentions, completely disinform the population in government-run schools, condition the public to think they live in a democracy, and convince people to vote for their own enslavement. Because we have lost our way and let our government do things it should not be doing, much of the world has lost respect for our nation. We must now start to rebuild what we have lost over generations. We cannot fix this problem by voting or begging government to do something. Government is now the problem. Government is no longer fixing things. Government is now what prevents you from fixing things. We must ourselves restore the nation to its original condition as a constitutional republic, governed by we, the people, the sovereigns, all of us rising to the level of responsibility, honor, and self-rule that we once had. I welcome you to visit freedomtaker.com and find help on that website, and feel free to contact us with any questions or just reach out so we can build networks of free-thinking, like-minded people. Let us connect with each other, unify, and strive for high standards of freedom and prosperity together so our work counts and has effect. We're constantly being pressured to divide ourselves into conflicting identity groups, but there are many fundamental things that every one of us can agree on and work toward, and there is no reason we can't unify on the things that really matter to all of us. As powerful as online social networks are, what really matters to you are family and community, things that are local, things that are real. Let us use the electronic services and whatever technology and industry we can find to build real value where we live and for who we live with. The strength of a nation, even all of humanity, starts with the individual, the family, and the community. We can never be globally responsible if we are not individually responsible. What we are doing is not working. We need plans, projects, values, and dreams for a better world. We must keep what we earn and put it to better use. At freedomtaker.com, we welcome your ideas. We hope we can help you and do our part. We hope we can inspire and be part of the better world to come.